Hello and welcome to episode 431 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Nev and welcome to everybody that's watching the show. Sorry that Carlos is not here this week. He's doing another one of his gigs, but we are going to have quite a nice show for you tonight. Lots of stuff. And in fact, in this week's show, we feature more overruns than an Airline Pilot Guy show episode. An easyJet A320 has a close encounter with a drone, and British Airways returns to its full Club World service. In the military, we have got quite a few new aircraft entering service, and we've got an update on last week's story of Western pilots advising the Chinese military. And joining me this week over in the PT UK Master Suite studio is Matt Smith.
Not necessarily pressing all the right buttons this week, it seems.
Well, you know.
But yes, I'm here. How are you, mate? You all right?
Very well, thanks. Yes, not bad at all. How's your week been?
Yeah, not too bad, actually. So I've been quite busy. We're sort of, believe it or not, we're romping up to that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this word yet, am I? Christmas.
Oh.
I know. We're sort of romping up to that at work. So it's been a lot of meetings, sort of in terms of planning and how we're going to work failures and stuff like that. So it's been an interesting week, really, sort of planning for Christmas, because sort of first or second week in, it all kicks off in earnest. So
it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really not far away at all. But yes, I'm very good. How about you? What have you been up to this week?
Yeah, went to Helsinki in Finland on Monday and Tuesday. Came back on Wednesday morning, and on the Airbus A350-900 both ways, and that's a lovely aircraft. It is so quiet, very comfortable, and very pleasing as well. Nice food from the Finnair boys and girls, and nice service as well. So that was really nice. So glad to be back home, but it was a nice trip.
I bet.
So, yeah, and anyway, over in the United States of America, somewhere is Armando. Morning, Armando.
Good morning. It is actually morning here. It's I'm in Denver, Colorado, where it snowed last night. I have this beautiful view of the snow-capped Rocky Mountains right outside my window. It's a gorgeous day. Finishing up training here at Flight Safety for my Pilatus recurrent training. So I have a day off today and then check ride tomorrow. Then I fly home back to Charlotte tomorrow.
Lovely.
Nice. So it sounds like you're busy back in the sim. Is that right as well?
They do keep you busy, especially on recurrence, where they don't have as much to teach you. They just like to throw literally everything in the book at you. And, one day is a high, hot, and heavy. So high density altitude. It's hot, you're heavy. It's surrounded by mountains and wind shear. Yesterday was the icing day. So you're flying around in icing all day long with de-icing equipment failures and all kinds of crazy, they'll throw equipment, avionics failures at the same time as they give you airplane failures. And the whole time you're in ice, you can't see anything, trying to knock out approaches. Well, let's just hope that I never have any flight in real life as stressful as anything in the simulator.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the plan, isn't it? Usually, I suppose. They literally throw everything but the kitchen sink. Well, and sometimes including the kitchen sink. They throw it all at you. Just go nuts.
I wouldn't put it past them to actually bring in the kitchen sink.
That reminds me
Well, let's have a look at... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say that reminds me of our 200th episode that we have at the Sim Centre in London, wasn't it? And we did literally throw everything at Captain Jeff, didn't we, in the simulator?
Yes, that was quite amusing.
Yes.
But he did cope remarkably well with it.
He still put it on the tarmac, yeah. Absolutely.
And heavily chewing the chewing gum, I seem to remember.
Indeed.
The level of concentration was
more than any flight he's ever been on, I think.
Yes. Exactly. Well, thanks to everybody in the chat room tonight. Let's just read out who's in the chat room. It's Richard Adams, Mazuz Kareem, Dirk S is in there, Captain Cruz, Lee Davis, Graham Haley's there. Hello, Graham. Evan Shue, all the way from Australia. Morning to you, Evan. Who else is there? Bill's in there. Hello, Bill. Good to see you in there as well. Pilot Pip is in there. And who else? Somebody called John Clader's in there. I don't know who he is. Who else have we got there? Yeah, I know it is. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, precisely. And so, yeah, thank you one and all for joining us in the chat room. Really appreciated. Don't forget, later on, we've got the final part of the Chris Burwell interview, which Nick did for us. That will be a fascinating quarter of an hour or so as well. So let's get going with the commercial section. Off we go.
Let's turn on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
Well, this week there's lots of stuff going on with runway overruns, bad weather, evacuations and precautionary disembarkations. The websites that we've taken these from are semanticscholar.org, avherald.com, aviation24.be, simpleflying.com, avherald, and from Twitter as well. Now, just before we get started, a precautionary disembarkation, of course, is a type of evacuation where passengers are quickly disembarked from an aircraft in a controlled manner. Sometimes slides are used and sometimes stairs are used, and sometimes both are. Generally, passengers are told to leave everything behind in this situation, but crew are told to use their judgment in allowing or not allowing passengers to carry belongings with them. Crew usually will use evacuation commands with passengers to remain assertive but not distressing so as to cause panic. There aren't time limits for these kinds of evacuations, so an aircraft would not need to be evacuated in 90 seconds or less, but they can take quite a while. So, for example, the precautionary disembarkation of QF32, which, if you remember, was the A380, with 469 passengers and crew on board, took an hour to coordinate before it commenced, and a further hour to actually complete it. But there's been quite a lot happening over the last week or so. A Century Canadair CRJ 200 deviated off the runway after landing in Managua, Nicaragua. A precautionary disembarkation of 59 people occurred, with no injuries, fortunately, and the aircraft had little to no damage. On the 20th of October, an Amelia International Embraer 145 registered Foxtrot Hotel Yankee Oscar Golf, operating domestic flight 8 Romeo 1217 between Rodez and Paris-Orly in France. During landing at the Parisian airport, the aircraft suffered a runway excursion. Rescue services rushed the site. 42 passengers and crew safely exited the aircraft and were attended to by airport staff, the airport wrote on social media. On October the 22nd, Rwanda flight WB601 from Kigali International Airport to Kamembe International Airport touched down at its destination at 7:37 local time on Saturday. However, a Dash 8 ended up approximately 100 metres from the end of the runway in a patch of tall grass. A precautionary disembarkation of passengers and crew resulted in no reported injuries. Just as a side note, the airport is quite high, 5,192 feet above mean sea level, and the runway is just under 5,000 feet long, or short, depending on which way you look at it. On the 26th of October, a LATAM Airbus A320 suffers substantial damage to its windshield, engine and radome after flying through a hailstorm. Due to the heavy turbulence, almost the entire nose radome had broken away. The Airbus A320-200, registration Charlie Charlie Bravo Alpha Zulu, performing flight LA1325 from Santiago in Chile to Asunción, Paraguay, with 48 people on board. However, after encountering a heavy storm, the crew decided to divert to Foz do Ignacu for a safe landing. about 40 minutes after go-around. The aircraft was on approach to Ascension's runway 20 when the crew initiated a go-round from 2,400 feet due to weather, as reported by the Aviation Herald. After remaining on the ground for slightly more than 3 hours, the aircraft departed to Ascension again. However, this time as well, the aircraft apparently got caught by a severe storm where the damage happened, but continued for a safe landing about 5 hours after the go-around. And on October the 23rd, a Korean Airlines Airbus A330-300, registration Hotel Lima 7525, performing flight KE631 from Seoul to Cebu City with 162 passengers and 11 crew on board, had gone around at a low height twice following approach to Cebu's runway 22, climbed back up to 5,000 feet, entered a hold and landed on Cebu's runway 22 at 2307, about 55 minutes after the first and about 42 minutes after the second go-round. The aircraft crossed the runway end at about 80 knots over the ground and came to a stop about 360 metres past the runway end, close to the airport perimeter fence. No injuries are being reported, but the aircraft, having broken through the localizer antenna, received substantial damage, including collapse of the nose gear, damage to the nose underbelly and penetration to the cockpit. Philippines Civil Aviation Authority have opened an investigation into the accident. Well, it's that time of year, isn't it? With the weather being a bit inclement from, various parts of the world. And a lot of these incidents seem to be weather related, don't they? There was bad weather in the area or around the terminal area of the airport. What do you think, Armando?
Yeah, I think this is for 1 week or 2 weeks worth. This is pretty significant as far as overruns. I'm sure the industry as a whole will probably take a look at this. It's already a high interest safety item. Especially in the jets, it's such an easy thing to do. You train, as we were just talking about, you train for wind shear events, you train for heavy weather, but it doesn't, this kind of, I don't know if this makes you feel better or worse as a passenger, but it doesn't take too much to get it wrong. Believe it or not, especially at the speeds that some of these jets are landing, the training, maybe the crews aren't really proficient in flying in these kinds of really, really challenging weather conditions. That LATAM A320, they flew through the storm and then they flew back through the storm. That's amazing. The pictures that Matt put up there and the video that's playing out, the damage that aircraft suffered was pretty extensive. I mean, the windshield, you could hardly see anything out of. The radome was completely gone. That's certainly not doing anything for aerodynamics. So, in their case, a bit of a foul on getting into the storm in the first place, but good job getting it back on the ground. I always feel bad when we have those stories when we say, hey, great job, crew, for getting the airplane on the ground safely, but what were you thinking?
Isn't it almost as John Jester points out in the chat room, you do not fly through thunderstorms, do you? It doesn't matter whether you're in a PA-28 or an A340.
Absolutely. And last week when we were talking about it with Andy about how do you get into it? How do you paint yourself into that corner where you're landing with 400 pounds of gas on in an Airbus, with adverse weather and with all the technology that we have today, from satellite technology to onboard aircraft radars to dispatch to ACARs and being able to get messages and reroutes and air traffic control, having the weather on their screens, even in some of these more developing parts of the world, they have some of these things. And it's just just still surprising to me. But this week, that's a lot. That's a lot of overruns, and I'm glad there wasn't any major ones.
I was just about to say, thank goodness there was no fatalities or serious injuries as a result of all that. But that's a lot of hardware that needs some patching up.
A lot of paperwork is what I'm seeing there. A lot of paperwork.
I don't know about you, Matt, but I fancy a cup of coffee.
Always. Although I am rather enjoying my my cheeky little glass of wine that I'm enjoying this evening. Cheers, everyone.
Okay. Yes.
But yes, story number 2, Delta this time for a change. And the headline is Delta joins forces with Starbucks. Nice. Simpleflying.com is the source on this one. Delta Airlines has announced a new loyalty partnership with Starbucks beginning today, which I assume is today, because they're usually quite good about this, especially when John's done the notes. United States customers participating in Delta's Sky Miles and Starbucks Rewards program can link their accounts and earn 1 mile per $1 spent on eligible purchases. Not only will customers enrolled in the Delta Sky Miles, will customers be enrolled into the Delta Sky Miles and Starbucks Rewards programs earn 1 mile per $1 spent on qualifying purchases, but on the days when a customer is scheduled to fly, Delta purchases at a participating Starbucks store will earn double stars. Additionally, those who link their Sky Miles and Starbucks rewards programs between today and the 31st of December 2022 will earn 500 miles and another 150 miles once a qualifying purchase is made. Delta began serving Starbucks coffee on board select flights from 2013 and on board all flights from 2015. Now, I'm going to be slightly controversial here. I don't like Starbucks. I think it's terrible coffee, personally. And I think, and I always say it wrong, the nicest coffee that I've ever had on an aeroplane is on a 737-800, and it was the Lavanza. Coffee where it got the filter like thing all built into the lid and everything, and I was very lucky because before somebody I know who used to work for them left, they brought me a load of them for me to be able to enjoy at home, which was quite cool. But that was one of my favourite.
I have a question. I wish we had cabin. We need to have somebody on the show, a host that is cabin crew, because I have so many questions. I don't fly with cabin crew. So if you're serving Starbucks coffee, is it still from the same old carafe that hasn't been cleaned since 1985? That you just attribute the extra
the
taste to the altitude? I mean, I see, on social media, every once in a while you see one of these things that it's like 10 things that a flight attendant doesn't want you to know, and usually pretty near the top is don't drink the coffee or the water because those things don't get clean. Yeah. I know for us on the corporate side, I don't know if I should say this or not, but it's on our end of month cleaning list.
Right.
That's the only time
good to know.
We rinse them out, but we only deep clean them once a month.
So we have a very fancy coffee machine where I work in the office, and I'm afraid to say, Armando, it is rigorously cleaned every single day.
Oh, well, I hate to say it. But John Jester used to fly for a regional airline, and he says they don't come off the plane.
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh,
nice.
But then we have Owen in the chat room who says they do get cleaned and quality tested in most countries. The exception must be the United States of America.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I've just been corrected as well, by the way. Apparently it's Lavazza.
Lavazza,
that's it. Lavazza,
yeah.
That's it. That's how it said, Lavazza.
That's the one.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I've always been saying Lavanza. I've literally been saying it wrong my entire life.
Before we move to the next story, Captain Cruz is just said he's flying to Atlanta in November on Delta, and he's going to partake in some of the Starbucks rewards. But he's also going to the Renaissance Hotel in Atlanta. If you guys remember, that's where we did APG 500. Yes. Beautiful. That's any plane watcher, any enthusiast, that is the hotel. Now, you're not going to sleep because Atlanta Hartsfield doesn't stop.
Yeah.
But But if you get one of the rooms that has the porch overlooking the airport, you can see all 4 runways in Atlanta, including all the terminals from the Renaissance. Beautiful
Nice.
hotel. So have fun with that, Captain Cruz.
Yeah, good luck. Yes, I think is what we're politely saying there. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Sounds good.
Well, so the next story, Armando, it's all about Alaska Airlines. I've only flown on Alaska once, actually, or twice, just from Seattle to Portland and back. But pretty nice airline, and they're getting the checkbook out by the looks of things.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a topsy-turvy world of aviation. One week we say, "Hey, Aaron, look at everything Airbus," and then this week we're talking about Boeing, and Alaska Airlines just announced yesterday, I think it was, that it's exercising its options to purchase 52 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft for delivery between 2024 and 2027. That'll grow the airline's fleet of 737 MAXs from 94 to 146. So Alaska also secured rights for 105 more planes through 2030. That's ensuring access to sufficient aircraft for fleet replacements. And this actually represents the largest commitment for future aircraft in the airline's history. I am with you, Mev. My dad, who passed away a couple of years ago, he was an FAA inspector, and he was in the Seattle Flight Standards District Office, the FSDO, and the Alaska Airlines Certificate Management Office. So big airlines, like I think we've talked about it before, but big airlines like Alaska, Delta, American, United, Southwest, they'll have their own FAA representatives. They have their own section, the Certificate Management Office, the CMO, that oversees, because as you can imagine, there's so much from a training, maintenance, operations standpoint. And my dad was an inspector for Alaska Airlines, and biased or not biased, he always had just nothing but the best things to say about Alaska Airlines, from their operations to their maintenance to their pilot training, their cabin crew. And he would fly with them regularly and do inspections all the way into their most austere and remote airports, Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, down to Juneau and Anchorage and everywhere that Alaska flies. But he was always incredibly complimentary of Alaska Airlines, and I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about them.
No, and obviously the route network that they operate is incredibly large, with all kinds of different weather, different temperatures, and different everything, isn't it? Really, on their network. So yeah. I mean,
they fly all the way down into the southeast United States from Washington and Seattle. But another 737 story, IAG announced that its shareholders had just recently approved an agreement with Boeing to order a total of 50 737-8-200s, aka the MAX, and 737-10s, plus another 100 options. But Boeing and IAG announced this agreement that was subject to the shareholder approval. They announced this back in May, earlier this year in 2022. The firm order now for 50 737s will be reflected on Boeing's orders and deliveries website starting next month. As you guys already know, the largest model in the family, the 737-10, seats up to 230 passengers if in a single class configuration, and has a range of about 3,300 miles. So there you go. Now IAG jumping on the Boeing bandwagon, and that's another 150 potential orders for Boeing.
Yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? Yeah, incredible.
Next week we'll talk about how they messed something up, and like 4 other airlines are ordering Airbus.
Yeah, we'll be flip-flopping between the two manufacturers every week, I would imagine. Yes, absolutely. But here's an interesting story from the is that the LBB Online? I think it is. Yes. There are over 500 unique reasons to fly in British Airways, unique campaign. The new positioning, a British original, is a celebration of British Airways people, its customers and the nation, which has helped make British Airways a British original. It explores the individual and original reasons people travel, whether to reconnect with loved ones, take time out, or to immerse themselves in a different culture. The campaign includes an original approach, both in creative and media, bringing to life reasons for travel in a record-breaking number of executions, encompassing over 500 unique print, digital and outdoor executions, and over 32 different short films, all running over the course of a month. The campaign is centred around the common question travellers are frequently asked when they land at a new destination: what is the purpose of your visit? But instead of ticking the standard boxes of business or leisure, viewers see more meaningful and relatable answers for travel, reflecting each and every one of us. Sometimes funny and sometimes moving, but always celebrating originality in all its incredible personal guises, showing that BA recognises each of its customers as individuals. The print, digital and outdoor imagery embroiders a stripped back approach, embracing negative space, simply showing a tick box. The series will include over 500 different and uniquely written copy lines, showing viewers an original reason for travel across every media site. Some of the examples of reasons to travel include because I have too much on my plate, none of it is seafood, and to feed the social feed. These will continue to adapt according to the location, time of day, weather, and what's happening in the news. Hamish McVeigh, who's head of brands and marketing at British Airways, said, "We really wanted this campaign to celebrate the originality of our customers and our people. Every time a customer boards a plane, they are doing so for a unique reason, and we know that these journeys are so important. We are working hard on making positive changes across our airline, and this brand campaign allows us to showcase our motivation, which is our customers and our people." Well, that sounds all very nice, but could we have slightly cheaper fares, do you think?
I think this is quite genius marketing, I've got to be honest.
It is, yes, it is, and I'm sure it's excellent value for money, and it's all marvellous. But yeah, I think we do with the fares coming down a little bit. They're just getting a bit hot recently again. So, but no, I mean it looks nice, doesn't it? You know, I must say, I'm glad I'm not involved in marketing. I'm going to be able to come up with that.
Yes, purpose for travel, business. Sorry, we're laughing because the graphic. So for those listening to the audio version of this, the graphic. So let me describe it. It's basically a white background. Bottom left-hand corner, we've got the British Airways logo and the little red and blue swirl just above that, and then underneath that a line that says a British original. At the top of the screen, reasons for travelling. Essentially, I think with British Airways is the guys. Business is one of the tick options. Leisure is one of them, or the one that they've chosen is out-tanned by a goth, which is has amused me. I'll be brutally honest.
Yeah, and just to back up my point about the cost of flying, Jenny Parkinson says she looked up the Edinburgh to Manchester fare one way, which was £435.
Oh my goodness!
Sterling. And that's just a bit hot, isn't it? Really? I mean, goodness me, that's ridiculous.
No,
Sorry, go on.
Speaking of marketing, for me, you know, with my close relationship that I have with the UK and how much I love it, it's always nice when I land at Heathrow and HSBC has the marketing inside all of the jetways there, and they have all of the British, all things British, and there's beautiful, beautiful pictures, and it's always nice to get off the airplane and all the way from the actual airplane through the jetway, through the hallways, into the 3-hour wait at the customs hall. It's so nice to have these vistas of the whole British Isles. It's always nice for me to come home.
I'm looking,
come home. Look, I just said, come home.
Come home, yeah. See, one day, Armando, one day you'll come to your senses. It's one of the things I like. Again, sorry, to describing some of these again to our audio listeners. I say again, similar sort of thing. We've got a what I call a landscape version. You know, the Nev the way that Nev prefers. Obviously, I love the fact because it's a digital billboard that is showing this particular image. But it says, "Are you travelling for business or leisure?" Those are your 2 out of 3 options. The third one being again because this weather sucks. And the ink has run on all of the logos and the writing and the text and all that. It's little attention to detail like that, isn't it? That sort of is probably why this will work, because it's making people smile, isn't it?
I wonder if somebody will phone up the signage people and say, "Oh, your poster's got a run on it."
Yes, I think they might. I think they might.
Hey, Matt, before you go on, I just want to say, since Nev read the names in the chat room, it has filled in nicely. And I feel like we're at a meetup now, because also in the chat room now is Pip, Masha, Micah, James Brown, Captain Cruz, Ray Davis, Jenny, Alex Robinson, Dirk, Arnie, and Bill are all in there, in addition to all the names we already read. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. We've got Graham Haley is a name I've not seen for a long time as well. We were mentioning that earlier. It's nice to have Graham back. Absolutely.
Now we haven't spoken about drones for a while and near misses, have we? So perhaps it's time to do that now, Matt.
Do you think? Okay, all right. Let me just. Are you sure about that? Yeah. Story number 4 is number 5. Sorry, my apologies. Is to do with easyJet, and the headline from SkyNews.com is easyJet plane comes within 10 feet of a drone in close encounter. Wow. An easyJet plane came within 10 feet of a drone, and pilots thought they heard a thud. An official report has found the Airbus A320 was flying from Gatwick to the Greek island of Rhodes when it's about 16,000 feet in the London air traffic control area. Pilots said that an unidentified flying object was spotted coming towards them. The UK Air Prox Board said a drone is limited to 400 feet. The object was described as black and spherical in shape. It was also large enough to be able for the pilots to be able to make out the details of a frame structure at its base. The pilots on board the 5th of July flight reported a very close encounter with the drone and said it had gone directly underneath the aircraft. Another report from the National Air Traffic Services quoted that what had been relayed from the flight deck. One pilot said that they were very nearly just hit by a drone. We're talking less than 10 feet. They added, "We don't think we've hit it. There was a bit of a thud. We'll come back to you." Once the plane had reached its destination, the captain provided a further update saying, "I can confirm we did not hit the drone. It passed very close underneath the aircraft, but the thud the first officer heard was likely from the cabin. I completed a walk round and confirmed no damage and no maintenance action was required." Airprox rated the report as Category A, meaning there was a risk of a collision. It said, in the board's opinion, the reported altitude and or description of the object were sufficient to indicate that it could have been a drone. It added that the pilot's account showed a definite risk of collision had existed. TCAS, the traffic control avoidance system, did not detect anything. Presumably, guys, that's because of the size of it, I guess, because it would have, it would probably too small to show up on TCAS, isn't it?
TCAS only works with transponders.
Right, okay, fair enough. The airline said in a statement, "We are aware of the report and will always fully report any investigation. Safety is always easyJet's highest priority, and our flight crew acted in accordance with our standard operating procedures to ensure that the safety of the flight was not compromised." Now, I mean, I've got several issues with this. I'm very lucky enough to have an amazing drone. I was ironically only flying it last weekend, but I mean, I don't think I went above 50 or 60 feet, something like that. Actually, that's not true. I probably went above the house high enough to be able to take some pictures, because weirdly enough, I was checking to make sure, because we'd had some winds this weekend, the weekend just gone, and I was literally using it when the weather had, like the eye of the storm where it had died down, to literally check to make sure that none of the tiles had come off. So I was higher than the house, if you see what I mean, a 2-story building here in Bungay. But I I mean, mine's a good drone. I don't know if I would be confident that I had a signal from my controller at 16,000 feet or whatever. Yeah, 16,000 feet they were saying in London. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, that's 3 miles away-ish.
Well, I mean, even if it was only directly straight up, you're asking an awful lot of any kind of... that drone could easily... was it out of control? Maybe the person flying it didn't intend for it to sort of...
Yeah, I don't know. I think people get crafty with the programming and the software in them. I mean, anything can be reprogrammed. even geofenced or drones that are geofenced by the OEM,
which mine is. Yeah.
Yeah, they, anybody can kind of get in there and.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I took my drone to, say, Norwich Airport, for example, and I was standing at the perimeter fence, it wouldn't allow me to power up and take off. It would lock itself down because one of the conditions of it flying is it has to have a GPS and a data signal in order to be able to sort of plot things. And if you lose your data signal, it won't fly, because it links with your phone. And so it uses like the GPS data and stuff in the phone along with its own GPS thing. As you say, and then it uses that map data to basically ring fence it and say, no, you can't fly here.
I think when some of these more professional drones, pretty big, they will cause some damage on an airplane. The day that there is a collision between one of these larger size drones, not so much like a DJI type thing, but the bigger commercial size ones, it's probably going to bring an airplane down, to be honest, as they become more popular for filming and in many industries. But like Dirk is saying, this is probably intentional manipulation of the software inside to be able to let it, go that high.
But I suppose, yeah. So what we're talking about here is somebody who's perhaps not, because I know the people who use their drones for doing professional photography and things like that wouldn't dream of,
right.
like the pros wouldn't dream of doing this. So I guess there's nothing to stop someone who isn't a pro and who's going to adhere to the rules from purchasing said device, hot wiring it, for want of a better word, altering the software and bypassing all the GPS restrictions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, interesting, but thank goodness no damage occurred. But as we keep saying, it almost feels like it's a question of time, doesn't it, really, before something happens here. So we've had some very fortunate situations.
Well, 10 feet is nothing, is it? I mean, that's very much, it's more a miracle it didn't hit something. When it's only 10 feet away.
Well, if the aircraft was at 16,000 feet, it's going to be going fairly quickly itself, isn't it? So the possibility of a lot of damage doesn't bear thinking about.
It's very high, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about something brighter now, shall we? In fact, nice and bright is the Spirit Airlines, who today are going to be talking about a merger agreement on one day.
Yeah, This also a story that has just gone on and gone on and gone on. The whole Frontier, JetBlue, Spirit Airlines mergers, who's going to buy who. So Spirit Airlines announced yesterday that its stockholders had approved the merger agreement with JetBlue. The final voting results of this special meeting were tabulated by an independent inspector of elections, and they will actually file this with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Ted Christie, the president and the CEO of Spirit Airlines, said that this is an important step forward in our path to closing a combination that will create the most compelling national low-fare challenger to the dominant U.S. carriers, that they look forward to continuing their discussions with regulators as they work to complete the transaction and delivering value to team members, guests, and stockholders. So this is still subject to government approval, but basically the shareholders, the legal entities, the government regulators are now all working on this. So it was a pretty significant step forward in and the merger between Spirit and JetBlue. Who's going to keep the name? I would guess it's going to be JetBlue, but we'll see what happens out of this. They will become a powerhouse. They'll be the next Southwest Airlines. You know, Southwest started as a low-cost carrier. Arguably, they're still low cost compared to the others, but they've over the years separated themselves from that low-cost carrier tier of operator into what is essentially a legacy airline, you know, major airline. This will put Spirit Blue or Jet Spirit, you know, solidly in that category of probably the industry leader on low-cost carriers.
So I wonder what name they're going to decide upon then for the airline.
Yeah, Spirit Blue. I don't know. Jet Spirit. Fly, or maybe it's Jet Blue and Yellow.
Yeah, the last paragraph also mentions all of the lawyers and financial advisors that are involved with this as well. And of course, this is not a cheap thing to do a merger, is it? I mean, the legal costs alone must be phenomenal to do all this. And because it's dragged out for such a long time, there's some big invoices being sent out. Yeah,
and our professional pilots in the listenership, from a pilot standpoint, from a cabin crew standpoint, and from a operations support standpoint, mergers are never easy. There's so much to work through when it comes to merging operations and training, seniority lists. How do you do that? Now you have two airlines that have separate contracts with their pilot cadres. You have to figure out all of that. And then, you know, there's a number one at Spirit and a number one at JetBlue. Who's going to be the number one pilot? And you know, same thing with the number 100 and the number 100. What happens then? We'll see.
Yeah, I remember speaking to a couple of well-known pilots that you know, have been involved with mergers, and their seniority has gone south, you know, very, very much. So that 20 years they've put in, they find themselves not quite at the bottom of the list, but not as far up as they were previously. So there's a lot to it, isn't it? That's for sure, as well as the cabin crew and everybody else, as you mentioned. So the next story is on onemileatatime.com and the Lufthansa Group.com. Lufthansa has last week unveiled its biggest ever investment in the premium cabin experience as part of what's called the new, is it pronounced Allegri or Allegris product generation? For the very first time in the company's history, Lufthansa First Class is receiving spacious suites that offer nearly ceiling-high walls that can be closed for privacy. The seat, which is almost 1 metre wide, can be converted into a large, comfortable bed. All seats and beds are positioned in the direction of flight without exception. In addition to many other storage options, there's a large personal wardrobe in every suite. Passengers inhabiting the new first class can even remain in their suite as they prepare for sleep and change into Lufthansa first class pyjamas. If preferred, eating together is made possible for the guests at a large dining table whereby one can sit across from their partner or fellow traveller just as one does in a restaurant. Entertainment is provided by screens that extend across the full width of the suite with Bluetooth connectivity for wireless headphones. So that's the first class offering. In business class, this generation offers passengers direct access to the aisle from all the business class seats. The seat walls, which are at least 114 centimetres high with generous space in the shoulder area, ensure greater privacy. All seats can be converted into a 2 metre long bed, and passengers can enjoy the in-flight entertainment programme on monitors measuring nearly 17 inches. Wireless charging, noise cancelling headphones, and the ability to connect one's own devices, such as a PC, tablet, smartphone, or headphones, to the entertainment system via Bluetooth are also part of the new business class experience. Going a bit further down the back of the aircraft, now in premium economy, this was introduced at Swiss in the spring of 2022. The comfortable seat is integrated into a hard shell and can be adjusted effortlessly without affecting fellow passengers in the row behind. The seat offers generous space in the upper body and leg areas and is equipped with a fold-out leg rest. Passengers can enjoy movies or music on their personal 15.6-inch monitor with high-quality noise-cancelling headphones. The economy section doesn't sound too bad, actually, because following the success of the sleepers row, which offered economy class passengers greater relaxation on long-distance flights since August 2021, Lufthansa now plans to introduce a Sleepers Row 2.0 on all new aircraft. In this Sleepers Row 2.0, one must simply fold up a leg rest and utilise the additional mattress on offer for rest and relaxation on a reclining surface that is 40% larger compared to the original Sleepers Row. Also in the future, economy class passengers will also have the option of booking a vacant neighbour seat. So actually, that doesn't sound bad at all, does it? If you're in the
I think it's lovely.
The cheaper seats, not bad at all.
The one thing. So I mean, I've done premium economy once before. It was a really nice experience. Don't get me wrong. But essentially, other than a little bit more legroom, it wasn't actually any different to being in an ordinary, economy seat. And I have to say, one of the nice things about this particular offering is that I do feel like you're getting something a bit extra for being in premium economy. That much larger screen that's attached to the back of the headrest from the pictures I was showing there, I think that's a really lovely touch. So you feel like you feel like you're getting a bit more for your money. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not a cheap upgrade, particularly to go from economy to premium economy, and I do really like that. You do feel a little bit more enclosed. Maybe it's only sort of superficial, but I would say you probably do feel like you've got a little bit more privacy with that little wraparound thing. I know it's only a tiny thing. I mean, don't get me started on the first class and the business class, because they're just gorgeous. There's no two ways about it.
But actually, the premium economy offering is normally limited to sort of 40 seats, something like that, isn't it? Yeah. On most airlines, and they do make you feel quite special. Actually, it's its own little part of the
club almost. Own little club.
Yeah, very much so.
But I mean, as I say, I just feel like they're offering those who are having a premium economy seat, I feel like they're offering something a bit special, other than better food, or because you're essentially in premium economy, but you're more or less getting the business class food, if you see what I mean, and stuff like that. So I think it's a nice touch.
No, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, you've got the next story, Matt. And apparently here's some frequent flyers getting excited, which is never a good thing, is it?
Is there? Right. Okay, good.
Story 8.
Yeah, indeed. So this is, the headline is, fewer things get frequent flyers more excited than the prospect of an all-you-can-fly pass. Ooh, this is coming from the pointsguy.com and also shortstack.com. Never heard of that site before. Details are still somewhat light on the Frontier's just announced all-you-can-fly offering known as the Go Wild Pass. But we do know it's coming in the spring of 2023 and that it'll be valid for 12 months for over 300 days of travel in that year. This is nice. Forgive me, but I do recall a similar story when this was first sort of muted. We're talking a while ago now.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Anyway, this implies there will be days when it's not valid for travel, which we would presume would be on what the airline considers to be peak dates. That's not unheard of for flight passes, as when JetBlue had its pass over a decade ago, the pass that included the pass that included travel on Fridays and Sundays was more expensive than the one that excluded those dates, for example. We know that Frontier's Go Wild Pass will be valid for all of Frontier's destinations and offer an unlimited number of flights for the duration of the pass. However, a potentially challenging wrinkle in Frontier's flight pass model may be lurking in the line in the email the airline sends out about the new pass that says you will be able to get confirmed for your flight the day before you take off. Just let that sink in, shall we? You'll be able to get confirmed for your flight the day before you take off. If that means that the earliest you will get a confirmed seat on your flight, then that obviously limits the utility of the pass for those who need to plan trips more than one day in advance. A very important detail we don't yet know for sure is how much the pass is going to cost, other than Frontier saying that a limited number of passes will be offered at a wildly discounted rate. When JetBlue had its 30-day passes over a decade ago, they were just $499 to $699, depending on if you wanted to fly on a Friday or a Sunday or not. If you have an interest in being among the first to learn about Frontier's pass as soon as it becomes available, the airline has started a list for interested potential customers. Now, if it weren't for that cravat, if you like, that we were talking about just a moment ago, where you'll only be able to get confirmed.
Do you mean caveat?
Caveat, that's what I mean. A cravat is something else, isn't it? Never mind. It's the wine's really nice. That's all I'm saying. Never mind. That particular caveat. Now, I mean that. And I mean, you know, for the amount of flying that you have to do, Nev, for example, potentially having one of those passes could be quite beneficial to you. But if you can't find out until the day before you travel whether you've got a seat confirmed or not, it's almost like they're trying to exclude the business traveller, I feel.
Possibly, and I can't imagine the conversation I would be having with my customer. You know, well, I might see you tomorrow, Stuart, but if although I booked the flights, a while ago, they can't confirm that I've got a seat on it yet. That's not really going to work, is it?
No.
No, interesting. But again, I think there's always people and airlines out there looking to do something different. I
love the idea of it. I mean, it's one of those. I mean, if money wasn't an object, it would be a perfect gift for someone. Do you know what I mean? Where you could just say, "Here, you can go anywhere you like in the world for a couple of days and just come home or whatever." Do you know what I mean?
Armando, what do you think about that? Is that something which would appeal to you?
I don't know. Maybe when I retire. Like actually retire, and you have flexible travel.
That's absolutely not going to happen, like, ever.
Oh no, it will happen according to my financial advisor when I'm 60. So,
well done.
I do remember. I don't know when we talked about this last time. I don't remember if it was Frontier Airlines, but I specifically actually remember Steph talking about the utility of this and. I don't think there's anybody more qualified than Steph, who just takes these trips on a whim all over the world. And I don't think she was a huge fan of this kind of, now you're buying these passes. The airline is holding your money. You might as well just take that money and have it somewhere else and make money for you, so you can just buy regular tickets that you can confirm more than a day in advance.
That's the thing for me. That's what would put things off for me. I suppose if I was retired and it wasn't an issue whether I went that day or not, then perhaps I might feel more inclined to sort of do it. But
I think it depends
what this
on
reminds me of? So we have in the military, in the U.S. military, we have this thing called space available travel, and I've never used it. Well, I guess not never. I used it when I was a kid because my dad was in the military also, but. You can literally show up to a military base, usually the transport bases, and they have a terminal, just like they do in a small airport, and you can actually catch space available flights to wherever it is that they're going. They have somewhat of a schedule, but It's entirely free, and as a retiree, there's a category of priority for getting on the airplanes. But I could potentially say, you know what, I need to find a tanker that's going to RAF Mildenhall from the U.S. I may have to drive to Charleston, South Carolina, Charleston Air Force Base, or maybe up to Andrews Air Force Base. But it's all space available travel, almost like non-revving if you're in the airline industry. And this is what this reminds me of is I want to get to England, but in order to do that, I may have to go through Spain. I may have to go through Frankfurt before getting there. What was going to be a direct flight from Andrews to Mildenhall may now be stopping in Reykjavik. And they may just cancel the flight halfway through and say, hey, we're all going to go to Germany anyways. So it kind of reminds me of that, where you just need to have flexible plans and have basically nothing to, no customers meeting you, no family events to be at. Just, hey, I've got 2 weeks off and I'm going to just block off the first 3 days and a little adventure on how I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Yes, I suppose it depends on your appetite for risk and adventure, doesn't it? Oh dear. Anyway, Armando's got the next story about P2Fs.
Yeah, we're catering to our cargo family here. So yet more evidence of an increasingly active market for passenger to freighter conversions. This on the heels of an agreement by Amazon to lease 10 additional A330 300 P2Fs, as Nev mentioned, freighters from commercial aviation finance company Altair. Hawaiian Airlines has agreed to begin operating the aircraft for now. These aircraft are undergoing conversion by Airbus ST Aerospace in a joint venture with Elbe Flugzeugwerke for Amazon upon this first delivery scheduled for late 2023. So Hawaiian Airlines began operating A330-200 passenger jets in 2010, now flies 24 of them. So even though the Elba Aircraft Works also offers conversions of A330s, Airbus considers the longer fuselage A330 300 P2F particularly suited for these kinds of carriers because of its high payload capacity with lower density cargo. Christian Scherer, Airbus Chief Commercial Officer and the head of Airbus International, said that the endorsement of our freighters by Amazon speaks volumes about the market value of the A330 and the position that Airbus wide bodies are gaining in the cargo market. The Airbus A330 P2F was launched in 2010. DHL was one of the first customers of the 300, and they're deploying it on their Asia Pacific route. So pretty interesting, right? Continue, as we always say, cargo continues to grow, and freighter conversions continue to grow, and that is where we're going to see some of these retiring larger aircraft going, I'm sure, in the future.
Yes, even if they've done their passenger service, there's a lot more life left in them in a cargo operation.
Very much
absolutely.
so.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, presumably there is still a finite limit, though, in terms of, in the same way like the Vulcan, for example, was being retired because it was the airframe was now like super tired and couldn't be sort of, or is it just, perhaps considered not deemed worthy financially to sort of patch up and keep going. But I mean, presumably the airframes have a final date on them.
They do, but it may not necessarily be the whole airframe. So look at the B-52, for example, where maybe the airframe itself is good, the fuselage, but they have to re-wing them every 20 years or re-engine them, or there's life-limited components within the airframes. I think there's been significant manufacturing leaps between the 50s and the 60s when some of these first, 737s that we saw converted to now when you're talking A330s that were built in the 2000s, pretty significant leaps in the construction of them and the materials that may actually be longer and enable these airplanes to fly well into their, fourth and fifth decade, and especially, doing as many legs as they do. And but even then, we didn't include the story this week, but then you also have, I think China just produced a drone. It's a 4-engine turboprop drone that fits 3 or 4 cargo containers in there. The cargo thing, in e-commerce is just going to continue to grow, and I think we're going to see a lot of this happening.
Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely. Next story is on the travelweekly.co.uk, and it says that British Airways has returned to its full Club World service, which was simplified during the pandemic to reduce interaction between cabin crew and customers. The full service in the long-haul business class cabins sees each course served to passengers individually, and new Club World menus reflect British ingredients and traditional fare, along with regional variations tailored to specific routes. For customers wanting to maximise their sleep on board, the airline is also reintroducing its express service on evening flights. Customers can request a one-tray service so they can have a quick meal and then head to sleep. Sadia Ismail, who's BA's head of onboard experience, said that we have taken time to ensure that we are offering a premium brasserie-style dining experience that not only tastes good, but one that our crew feel confident in delivering. We have had such great feedback from the recent introduction of the new menus across our first World Traveller Plus, World Traveller and Club Europe cabins, and we know our new Club World menus won't disappoint. The focus on classic British meals ties in with the airline's recently launched marketing campaign, which uses the slogan "A British Original," as we mentioned earlier in the show. Furthermore, the airline has revamped its Club World check-in zone at Heathrow Terminal 5 and is continuing to introduce its newest business class seat, the Club Suite, across its Boeing 777 fleet. Well, I'm hopefully going to get a bit of a taste of some of this early part of next year when I go to Dallas on the A380. So I'm hoping that they will do a bit of that. Although the trouble is with these long-haul flights, there is a danger that you can overeat, I find, and then you get to the other end and someone says, "Oh, Nev, do you fancy going out for dinner?" And you go, "No, I really couldn't eat another
Actually,
thing."
no, I do not. Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see how that goes. But yes. So,
Indeed.
So good news for Loganair coming up, Matt. That's good to hear, isn't it?
It is, and Armando had sent me a picture, and I've been a little distracted. So bear with me. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to do that thing we're not famous for as men, 2 things at once. Story number 11 is lots of good news for Loganair. Loganair has returned to profitability following a challenging period for the air transport industry. This is coming from UKAviation.news. Now, of course, this is interesting because it's up for sale, isn't it? The guys who own it have just put it up for sale. So this is actually, talk about getting their timing just right for very much selling it as a going concern, isn't it? Following assurances that the company remains deeply committed to the islands, Loganair has this Wednesday announced a before-tax profit of £4.98 million for the last year, accompanied by a turnover of £161 million. This news comes after losses in each of the previous 2 years as the effects of COVID-19 pandemic struck the airline industry. As it celebrates its 60th anniversary, Scotland's airline has also declared itself the UK's third busiest airline, behind British Airways and easyJet, when measured by the number of flights it operates. The statutory accounts also document for the first time that Loganair has secured a new long-term 5-year contract with the Royal Mail to undertake its Highlands and Islands Air services, delivering to Scottish Scottish Islands by day and connecting to Royal Mail's national network each night. 4 larger ATR 72-500 freighter aircraft have been introduced to replace the Saab 340 freighters for the new contract, with the older Saab aircraft being retired as part of a wider fleet renewal plan. In another sign of how well the airline is being prepared for sale, Loganair has repaid a UK government-backed loan that provided financial stability during the pandemic. This was part of the UK's coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, where the government backed the loan from Loganair's long-term banker Virgin Money. The money was repaid 9 months ahead of schedule, and Loganair has transitioned to a new financing agreement with Virgin Money. To top it all off, solidifying its commitment to the Orkney Islands, Loganair has announced it is launching a passenger service between London City Airport and the Orkney Islands for the first time. The twice-weekly service will operate on Tuesdays and Fridays, providing a connection between the islands and the UK's capital city from the 4th of April 2023. Operating via Dundee, passengers do not need to connect with a different flight and can remain on board during the turnaround in Dundee before continuing onwards with the 3.5 mile long flight.
3.5 hour long flight.
3.5 hour. My
Yes.
apologies. Sorry,
Yes.
I wasn't quite sure.
Which is quite a slog, isn't it? If you think it's London City to Dundee and then on to Kirkwall or wherever they're going to, that's a pretty long slog, actually. But
I mean, this story is just great news, isn't it? There's no two ways about it.
Connectivity,
and of course, we were talking about that was one of our stories last week, wasn't it? Where Loganair had paid off. It was going up for sale, and we discovered then, hadn't they? They paid off their COVID loan early. And when you think, and I'm sure Loganair was no different to a lot of the islands, essentially a lot of the airlines, where essentially they were on their knees during COVID, to not only come out of that with a profit, but paying off their loan 9 months early. I mean, somebody, I think, is, whoever's going to get their big checkbook out, probably Elon Musk, given the way things are going at the moment. There's going to be somebody's going to get themselves their hands on a really cracking little airline, I think.
yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it funny to learn that Virgin loaned Loganair money?
Yes.
Yeah. It always amused me when, also hardly connected to the same thing, but when you're in the British Airways lounge, you go for their internet connectivity, which is provided by Virgin. They must hate that.
Yes, must be sort of like.
Speaking of things that I hate and give me a nosebleed, is the prospect of the middle seat, Armando. I can barely. Well, I'm glad I'm not reading this story, I have to say. I'm glad that you are.
Well, but this way you could consider yourself a lottery winner, because obviously nobody likes to sit in the middle seat, and we were actually just talking in the chat room about how Euro business or intra-Europe travel, when I was flying with Eurowings or German Wings, their upgrade, I guess, product was you buy a ticket that doesn't have anybody sitting in the middle seat. So apparently there was a poll done. 7,500 flyers were polled. 0.6% actually answered that they prefer the middle seat. Now that's, I'm guessing, within the margin of error of the poll, or the people that actually answered yes to this were incapacitated.
On drugs?
Yeah, somehow they marked that little bubble. But this, well, according to Virgin Australia, this number may go up. They are starting a scheme to get passengers to willingly book the middle seat. They've launched what's called the Middle Seat Lottery. It's a special raffle worth about Australian $230,000 or $145,000 US dollars. It's only open to those who sit in the middle seat voluntarily or involuntarily during a flight. So from now through April 23rd, 2023, the Velocity frequent flyer member any frequent flyer member aged 18 or older who is seated in a middle seat can use the airline's app to enroll in this lottery. Each week, a different prize is going to be awarded to the winner of this lucky draw. Amongst some of the gifts up for grabs are a full-day helicopter pub crawl. That sounds pretty awesome. A 2-night holiday in Cairn, including flights, accommodations, and of course, a bungee jump. Fans of the Australian Football League, there are flights and tickets to Australian Football League Grand Final, as well as exclusive access to the pregame lunch and after party. And travelers can also win Virgin's Platinum Velocity frequent flyer status for 1 year, along with 1 million extra Velocity points, as well as, this is right up Carlos's alley, a few refurbished gallery carts or galley carts.
Yeah.
They call it gallery carts. They're galley carts. So there you go. If you're part of the Velocity program, you sat in a middle seat, get on the app, and go ahead and win some of those prizes. And, I don't know what this is. I don't know what they're trying to do. They're going to fill those seats anyways. But I guess enticing you to book a middle seat? Thoughts, Nev? Sorry. Are you cleaned up? Did you come back from the doctor already?
Oh boy, the prospect of it just makes my blood run cold. But you never know, do you? You never know. Not my preferred method of going on an aircraft.
I just don't like the whole idea of the lottery thing. It's just a gimmick, isn't it?
I agree. Yeah, but there's.
I guess if you've involuntarily sat there, right, you just got assigned a seat and you win one of these things, then there's nothing lost.
Yeah.
Nev doesn't even want to think of the prospect of this.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
It's a difficult conversation to have for me, I must say. But
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that brings us to the end of the commercial news section. Next up, we've got the final part of Chris Burwell's interview with Nick about 9 Lives, the book he has written, and great book it is as well. We're going to be offering this as part of a quiz question because we've got a signed copy here, and we will be featuring it on the YouTube channel as well. We've also got Nick asking some quite difficult questions, which he doesn't normally do, but have a listen.
Now, this is a slightly contentious question. I hope you won't object. But you tell us that in 1994, the RAF believed that a female pilot's flying aptitude was of a lower standard than that of a male pilot. In addition, you mentioned that lady pilots at Cobham might have struggled to make the grade had they tried to join the RAF, unlike some of their male counterparts who worked for you. In light of the equality issues such opinions raise, would you like to expand on your position a little more?
Well, not particularly. I would. What I've written in my book is exactly what I think about it, and I don't think there's a simple answer to this one. And more evidence on female aptitude towards flying may well be available, but I'm purely going back to what I was briefed by the Director of Recruiting when I was taking over at Skempton about female aptitude. And it was very interesting that they showed this graph with the 2 curves about female aptitude versus male aptitude towards flying. And in fact, the fact is that the female curve was displaced to the left by and large. So what that told you was that some of these female pilots would be just as good as the guys, but you would have fewer of them if you follow the logic of the graph, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. So that was the fact that they were, at that time, aptitude testing all the females that went through selection to get a database going to have a look at this, and this is what it was coming up with. So I'm not saying for a moment you're not going to get very capable female pilots. We know there are very capable female pilots out there. That always have been and there always will be. But if you want a large number of them, it might be difficult if you have a very high entry level to find enough females to meet the quota.
It's interesting. I understand entirely, though, in particular, in the recent news of the resignation of the group captain recruitment, who has taken great exception to the quota system that the RAF are trying to introduce now. I hope you don't mind me bringing that up.
No, because that's exactly what I'm saying, because if you finish up with an arbitrary number that you want 20% female pilots this year, you may have a lot of trouble finding the right quality to meet that quota system.
Is part of that the fact that we're not attracting the right type of female pilot to the military? I mean, we know from the airline experience there are plenty of incredibly capable female pilots, and in fact we shouldn't really be having a conversation about the sex of the pilot at all. We just should be looking at ability. But is there something we're missing when we look at the appeal military flying has to the ladies of, out there who might consider the job?
Well, I mean, military flying is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get their brain around. I've done a lot of recruitment, particularly when I was in Spain latterly, talking to people about going into a career as a pilot. And I say, or I don't do it anymore, but I've always started off the conversation when mum and dad come along with their son or daughter. I usually start the conversation by saying, so you want to be a pilot? Yes. Okay. What is the cheapest way of learning to fly? Or how can you learn to fly without spending any money? And a lot of them just go, oh, I don't know. And then some say, oh, join the military. Yes. I said, and if you come to fly with us in Spain, to train with us, how much is it going to cost you? And I go, well, I don't know. I said, well, it's going to cost you about £100,000. So I said, on one hand, the military will teach you to fly for nothing. On the other hand, you're going to spend £100,000 to come and learn to fly down in Spain. And that's a good course, and it will get you exactly where you want to be, but it's £100,000. So discount learning to fly with the military at your peril, or think about it hard before you decide you want to go down the commercial route. And then they say, and quite often they say, well, we've actually thought about military, but we've discounted it because A, the discipline, B, being shot at, it's dangerous, and they come out, fine, you've thought about it, that's great. Don't join the military. Right, now let's talk about coming to Spain to fly with us.
If you want to attract the right type of pilot, whether they're female or male, you've got to zero in your recruitment on people with the correct aptitude.
Correct, Nick. Yeah, I'm with you again. And I think joining the military as a pilot or aircrew is a very difficult thing for some people this day and age to make that decision. They want to go and do that. It's a real commitment. Because, as I mentioned in my book, it's not just a matter of going off in a very exciting aeroplane having fun. It's actually finding yourself on the potential receiving end of some nasty people, or in my case, finding that you're flying a Harrier across the Atlantic and then down the eastern seaboard to go and confront the Guatemalans. You just suddenly think, this is where I am. You've got to be committed to doing it. You've got to be committed to taking the government's shilling for doing that job.
Somewhat in contrast with Cobham, your time with the Spanish Flight Training School, which we've just mentioned, FTE Jarez, is noticeably more relaxed, enjoyable and successful. What do you put that down to?
Very simple, actually. Well, two things. Spanish people are lovely. The other thing is that it's a large flying school, but it's not a huge organisation. It's not like the Royal Air Force, and it's not like Cobham either. Cobham quite a large company. It's a fairly small operation where everybody knows everybody, And the issue there at FT Jerez was that the CEO, a lovely Spanish guy called Oscar, selected people, and in our case, the flying side, which he was not a pilot, he'd done some flying, but he wasn't a pilot. He just wanted us to run it and do the job. And if we could make it work properly and safely, he was happy. So he was largely hands-off and appreciated what we were doing.
Sounds great. In your summing up, you mentioned that the Harrier Force was fortunate in being given the most able of pilots who went through training. I often wondered if that ever led to feelings of superiority amongst the pilots in the Harrier Force.
God, I couldn't admit to that, could I?
Well, perhaps I should be asking the rest of the Air Force.
You should be asking the rest of the Air Force about that. Yes, I think there is. That is probably a justifiable accusation, and in fact, Clive Loader makes comment of it in the foreword to the book, quite rightly so as well. Absolutely. And I think yes, the Harrier Force always saw itself as slightly different, and the reasons for that are quite obvious with the revolutionary aircraft and the fact that we did all sorts of wacky things, which is what the book's largely about, which we all enjoy hugely. So yes, you could become a little bit arrogant. And in fact, I tell the story when I arrived at Gloucester in personnel management, how my fellow squadron leaders had wound the girls up in the office about, oh, Harrier pilots are special and so on, which led to the early morning Monday whiskey drinking.
Excellent. Yes, well, you'll have to read the book to find out about that. Yeah. The Chief of the Air Staff, Sir Glenn Torpey, decided to prematurely scrap the Harrier Force, whilst the Jaguar's life was actually being extended. How did you feel about that decision?
Yes. It was it was a very unfortunate decision. I feel for Sir Glenn having to make that decision. There is no doubt that the Harrier had been developed to a very high standard at that point, with the GR9 in service, with the range of weapons that it could carry, the ability to operate off the flat top, and as I mentioned in my book, to see the aircraft come out of service along with the flat tops for the Royal Navy just at the time we needed them off Libya was quite ironic, really, and very sad. I think the decision was largely a Harrier versus Tornado one, Tornado GR4 one, and I have to admit the Tornado GR4, greater weapon carrying capability, longer range, 2 crew, all that sort of thing, more of them. It was probably a very sensible decision to keep the GR4 running and for the Harrier to go. And I say that very sadly because it was a great aircraft and it left service too early. There is no doubt about that. But within the financial constraints that Sir Glenn was facing at the time, that's life.
Absolutely. Now, the Harrier was renowned as a difficult and potentially dangerous airplane to fly, and you mentioned the deaths of 4 OCU instructors killed just before you began your training. But interestingly, none of those accidents, there was a controlled flight into terrain, a mid-air collision, and an inadvertent ejector seat firing, were connected with the Harrier's unique flying qualities.
No.
So, do you have any thoughts on that?
They're all pilot error. There's no doubt about that. The flight into terrain up in Norway was put down to an optical illusion, and that
was that the little fir trees.
Yeah, the small fir tree versus the big fir tree.
Yes,
and that was what that was put down to. Which is very interesting, and of course optical illusions have killed a lot of people in flying, cloud banks versus mountainsides and all this sort of thing. You know, there are some very dangerous optical illusions out there. So yes, it was pilot error, but we're all human, and if you get an optical illusion, it can finish up with flight into terrain, which is what happened in that case. The mid-air collision between 2 instructors, it was a standard form of attack. There was a mistake made. It was human error. And again, that comes back to my point made earlier on about if you operate in the military, operating these machines, doing difficult jobs, mistakes are going to get made. And that was sadly one of those. And again, the guy who trod on his ejection seat handle as he was leaving the aircraft, I've done display flying I think there is a lot of pressure involved in display flying, and it's distraction. You can be distracted before you get airborne with all the crowds and everything that's going on. You can be distracted after landing. After landing, there's that sort of euphoria. Right, I've done the display, it went well, blah, blah, blah. You get back onto chocks, you've forgotten to put your pin in. And it's just distraction. And again, it's human error. It's very sad. But as you say, nothing to do with the Harrier at all.
Interesting. In your summing up, despite the success of your career, I did detect a feeling of uncertainty that might have led to your early retirement. You certainly mentioned your lack of university background as one cause, but I know several very senior officers who had a more limited education, recruited as airmen and went up through the apprenticeship scheme.
Indeed.
Surely that shouldn't have been a major impediment for you.
I think it got pulled into stark relief for me by going through the Royal College of Defence Studies course and then the Higher Command Staff course. Both those courses, you mentioned them earlier, but both those courses are for officers who are destined for higher rank, essentially 2 ranks higher from where you are. So as a group captain, I would have to have reports suggesting that I would make 2-star Air Vice Marshal. So otherwise I wouldn't have been sent on the courses. When I went on those courses, yes, I found the courses very interesting, I found them demanding, but I also found myself rubbing shoulders with people from across the military and other sectors who were destined for higher things, as I was supposedly, and I just didn't see myself in that category, to be totally honest.
By any standards, Chris Burwell has successfully enjoyed a varied and demanding flying career that has taken him from the world of a Harrier pilot to one of the lesser known areas of professional flying in the civil sector. His book candidly describes his life in all sorts of cockpits, doing a number of different jobs that the reader will undoubtedly find fascinating. It's a thoroughly good read, and I commend his memoir, 9 Lives, to you.
Discover the pioneers of speed and adventure at one of the UK's most iconic museums. Whether it's a tour of the legendary Concorde, a walk around the Brooklands aircraft factory, or maybe a behind-the-scenes look at the McLaren automotive cars, the Brooklands Museum has it all. Based at Weybridge in Surrey, it's the perfect day out for all the family. We can also host your private function or meeting in one of our amazing event suites. With so much to see and do, come and take a look at Great Britain's history of speed and flight. Find out more by going to www.brooklandsmuseum.com or give us a call on 01932 857 381. That's 01932 857 381. Wow. What a series that was, Nev. I'm really just brilliant. And as I say, good old Nick, not afraid to ask the odd, shall we say, difficult questions, shall we say.
As Richard said in the chat room, Richard Adams said, it's very great and very well considered questions from Captain Nick, and I couldn't agree more. And he's very well suited to this kind of interview, especially because he's been there and done it. And this is why I like using Nick to do this sort of thing. And in a few weeks' time, when I've got the editing machine up and running again, we'll be probably have about 3 parts of Nat Boys. And this is when Nick's interviewing Rick Peacock Edwards down at White Waltham Aerodrome, as we did the other week. So I'll be putting that together and we'll be putting that out as well. So
indeed. So, I mean, that's the end of this particular interview, isn't it? Fret not, though, people, because we do have another 2-parter coming next week, Armando. Perhaps you could just give people a bit of a heads up on that.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, while the video was with the Chris Burwell was airing out, even Nev admitted that the military is the best part of this show.
Did you record that?
No, I mean with Chris Burwell, and he actually with his bare hands raised the book, The Nat Boys, right? That's a military book. So, Nev, we may actually be turning you, huh?
No, I think
specifically about 9 Lives. Specifically about 9 Lives and Chris Burwell, the interview that you mentioned that we're doing over the next 2 weeks we're going to air out. We finished I finished the interview with this gentleman. His name's Stuart Airy. He was a pilot for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, one of the longest humanitarian aviation organizations in the world. And while I was explaining to him our podcast and our show and what makes us a little bit different, he actually said, "Oh, I just bought 9 Lives." And I said, "Well, go back and listen to the last, 4 or 5 episodes because we've actually interviewed the author of the book." But yeah, you see him there. We had a nice chat at the hotel lobby over a nice bottle of whiskey. And he tells us about his adventures. He was actually the deputy chief pilot for the Royal Flying Doctor Service in Western Australia. And after that, we talk about his introduction to aviation, and after it's either 14 or 17 years there, he went off to other ventures and is currently flying corporate in India. Now, we didn't touch any of that in the interview because it's his current employer, but just privately, over many drinks. That could be an interview in itself.
So let me just get this right. You actually conducted this interview over an entire bottle of whiskey. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Now the interview is only 52 minutes. The unedited was 52 minutes, and we finished. I opened the bottle, and it was empty when we left. So,
wow. Oh, I bet there's some interesting conversations on the cutting room floor there.
and I edited it at like 2 a.m. So
wow. Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Nev, we might need to check this one for errors. I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
No, it was a great interview, and Stuart's a great guy. He was actually my sim partner for this whole week.
Oh wow.
And it's not in there, but day one, so there's only a day of ground school, and then you jump right into the simulator. And day one, our instructor noticed that we had good chemistry between us. Now, he comes from the RFDS and flying overseas, and I come from a military background. Yet somehow we were able to work as a crew. Both of us work in crewed environments. Now, the Pilatus is a single pilot airplane, but if you operate it in a crew environment, then they test you and they train you as such. So they put the two of us together for the week, and we hit it off, and our procedures were fairly similar. Our approach to flying the Pilatus NG, the next generation one, was fairly similar, and the instructors actually commented on how well we were working together for being thrown in there, from 2 separate companies in 2 separate parts of the world. But anyway,
I blame the fact that you had an evening discussing his background over a bottle of whiskey. I think that may or may not have had something to do with it.
We only drink after the same.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's 2 parts that we've got coming up very, very soon. The first part being next week. Very excited to bring that. And then after that, Nev, we're back with Captain Nick, aren't we, with a very special series?
Yes. So we're going to be, as I say, we've got 3 parts of Nat Boys featuring Rick Peacock Edwards. And this is very entertaining, I think you'll find. We shot this down at, White Waltham Aerodrome, and it was, as you can see, not brilliant weather there, so we had to shoot it inside. But just give you a bit of a flavour about some of the things that
had to stay
Nick talked
current
about.
on quite a few types. At least one was operational, so I went back to the Tornado again. So I had a great tour there, basically sort of floating around the Air Force. I had responsibility for the whole Air Force, flew everything.
Can't wait to hear about that. That's insane.
As I said last week, when he says, I had responsibility for the whole of the Air Force and I flew everything. I mean, just gives you an idea of sort of the standard that we're talking about.
Yeah,
here.
very much a moment, I think. Yeah, absolutely. So, some great interviews still to come, guys. So make sure you stay tuned for those. I think we do need to do something now, though, Armando. That's the reason why you've hung around, let's be honest.
Well, Neb did whisper it in my ear, in our earpieces. He said, "All right, let's move on to the next and the best part of the show, which is the military." So,
DD, right. Okay. I don't believe you.
Bogies 135, 50, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay. 100 Bogies.
Right, so this first sort of military update is a couple of new airplanes, and I don't know why I'm so attached to this airplane. I really like it. I really like its capabilities. I've never even seen one in person, but the KC-390, it's made by Embraer. The first KC-390 Millennium cargo aircraft for the Portuguese Air Force was escorted by two F-16s in a good way, not in a bad way, and landed at Beja Air Base on October 16th, 2022. This is the first of 5 aircraft acquired by Portugal, originally in 2019, which soon became they will soon become the first European operator of the Brazilian made aircraft. The aircraft took off from Gavião Peixoto in Sao Paulo on October 15th, and after 2 fuel stops, it finally arrived at its new home. So this is a cargo transport plane. It's going to be delivered to the Portuguese Air Force in February of 2023, followed by an additional KC-390 every year until February of 2027. Now, the first 5 Portuguese crew members have already completed their qualification training in November of last year, 2021, at Embraer's facilities in Brazil. The KC-390 is going to replace 5 aging C-130H Hercules aircraft that are currently in service with the Portuguese Air Force. In the meanwhile, the first KC-390 for Hungary, who will be the second European operator of this type, is in final assembly stage and is expected to fly next year. After Portugal, in fact, Hungary and Netherlands selected the KC-390s to replace their AN-26s and their C-130Hs, respectively, becoming the second and third operators of this Brazilian aircraft in Europe. Now, very cool airplane. Jonathan Warner, I'm sure, is going to send us some pictures at some point. But
you're in Lucky's at work at the moment, so you'll get away with it on the live.
I'll probably get him in the middle of the night here. Or something. So then the next airplane we're going to talk about is one we did actually mention a couple months ago, but the HH-60W. So this is the Jolly Green Giant. It's not a Giant anymore. The Jolly Green 2 reaches initial operating capability and departs for its first operational deployment. This is the Air Force's newest combat rescue helicopter, so it's the W model of the HH-60. The milestone was celebrated with a ceremony at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. It's one of the first locations that are going to receive the HH-60W on September 9th, 2022. This public announcement, however, was delayed, with General Mark Kelly, the commander of Air Combat Command, giving the news on October 4th to public affairs and releasing the information just last week on October 12th. That picture there is the KC-390. So that was the first part of the story. If you forward on to that's the whirly bird we're talking about. This press release specified that the IOC, or initial operating capability, means that the Air Force now possesses enough logistics requirements, trained airmen to support a 30-day deployment to any independent location with a package of at least 4 aircraft. As a matter of fact, this helicopter will be deployed as soon as IOC was declared, as shown in the photos that you just posted up there from a few days ago, and that's from the Defense Department. So at least 2 helicopters were shown in the photos while they were loaded onto C-17s at Moody Air Force Base. Matt, did you show that picture? I think it looks like a big airplane puking out a little airplane. Yeah, that's the one.
That's a very good description for those listening on the audio version, to be fair.
Well, there you go.
It's giving birth, essentially. Giving birth.
Yeah. Pretty amazing that a bit, 60s Blackhawks are not little helicopters, and they fit into a C-17 like that. But no details were given with those pictures as far as locations or where they're going or anything like that. The only caption that was put out there said Moody Airmen set out on the first ever operational deployment of the HH-60W to provide rescue services in support of contingency operations. And of course, that could mean they're going anywhere in the world with these helicopters. Now, the last airplane we're going to talk about in this first story is Aero Vodoshory. Conducts the maiden flight of the L-159 T2X trainer prototype. So this Czech aircraft company is testing this aircraft as of just this week, I believe. The demonstration was conducted recently at Vodoshory's airport in the Czech Republic. The latest milestone comes 4 years of intensive work performed by the company to modernize and upgrade the L-159 to fulfill these emerging needs of fifth-generation fighter pilot training programs. This company is using the L-159 T2X to test and validate all its new features and systems, including some new design elements, some new avionics systems of the aircraft before they mass produce it. And this is really, I mean, if you look at it, it looks like an L-39, but it's just, all of these airplanes are being modernized to meet everything that we talk about on the show in the military segment, all the data requirements, the interconnectivity requirements. Imagine all these things that you now have to train the pilots earlier than later on how to manage not just the airplane and themselves, but all these systems too. Like really, they're systems operators. So there you go. I think we're going to see some of these aircraft, flying for another couple decades, but they're going to have to get retrofitted. So I didn't put names on this, but Matt, if you want to take the next story.
Yep, certainly. Yep.
Yeah, this is similarly, this is kind of a Navy version of this kind of airplane, but they're having some issues.
Indeed. So the story, as Armando is alluding to, it's from the NavyTimes.com, and the headline is Navy and Marine Corps training jets are grounded. The safety stand down that has grounded the Navy's fleet of T-45C Goshawk training jets happened after one of the trainers experienced a low-pressure compressor blade failure before takeoff on the 11th of October, officials have confirmed. Officials said no prior Goshawk mishaps are being attributed to this type of engine blade fault, although a mishap from August remains under investigation. The Navy initiated the safety stand down on the 14th of October. Goshawks are used to train Navy and Marine Corps fighter pilots. The T-45s have been flying since 1988, with the C variant entering the fleet in 1997. Now, it's not entirely uncommon for planes to be grounded, even if it's an isolated incident, isn't it? I mean, that the
Right.
protocol usually is, isn't it, to ground these things while they look into it to make sure there's nothing serious. But I mean, here's just a slightly crazy idea: could the age of this aircraft have something to do with this, possibly? I mean, I know one shouldn't speculate, I know, but
Sure. The engines, though, are usually under a pretty rigorous maintenance program. The engines will get replaced every several thousand hours. Hot sections get inspected or replaced. But this story kind of makes you think of every time we've had Peter on the show, and he's talking about these kinds of inspections that they do on commercial aircraft, and he's done some military ones too. But this is exactly the result of this. This is why Peter has a job, and you're doing a routine inspection, not attributed to any kind of mishap. They discovered this flaw in the engine. Usually, jet engines or turbine engines have a low pressure stage, high pressure stage, various blades and power turbines and that's exactly how this was discovered. It was during a routine inspection, and they said, "Wait a minute, something doesn't look right. Let's look at all the other ones," and then, by a leadership decision, they said, "You know what? The human safety is number one. We need to make sure that all of the aircraft, all of the engines, this particular component is safe to operate before we put them back in the air." And again, it just makes me think of every time we've had Peter on, and he talks about how incredibly meticulous these inspections are and how minute the tolerances are that he's looking for.
I bet. Now, before we move on, just going back to the other story, I mentioned a phrase there that has, shall I say, encouraged Captain Cruise to send us a photograph, because I mentioned the words "an aircraft giving birth" a moment ago. He's just sent us a really incredible photograph. This is now, if I've recognised those colours correctly, that's apart from an Emirates aircraft, is it not? That's being sort of ejected from the Beluga.
Yeah, it certainly looks like the vertical,
like the tail fin of I want to say the tail fin. Is that possible?
Well,
that right?
Yeah, and it's gotta be something big. I'm guessing it's an A380 or something tail fin, because if you look at the size compared to
the fuselage.
beluga.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, true.
Yeah, and look at, I mean, it is kind of puking out a little, looks like an A.
I want to say 320, 320 maybe?
I think 320 when I can just,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a door or just the straps that it's holding, that's holding it to the cradle, but yeah, the size of that tail fin compared to the A320-ish airframe that's popping out of there is pretty significant.
I know, indeed. So I couldn't resist sharing that, by the way. If you do want to send us photographs while we're on air, by the way, +44 757 2249166. That's the WhatsApp number. That's +44 757 2249166.
Yeah, and I just sent you a picture a few minutes ago. That was specifically for Nev, our instructor in the simulator. Just happens to have a modeled British Airways 747.
747, yeah. It's clearly a man of quality, right, Nev? Is that what?
Well, it looks a bit like an SP version. It looks a bit on the short side. I mean, don't want to, someone's obviously worked very hard on that, but it just doesn't look long enough.
Some people are so ungrateful, aren't they, Armando, honestly?
Yeah.
It does look a little wonky, but the reason this airplane was parked there because they can't simulate, they don't have the visuals for de-icing trucks. So what he said, well, your de-icing's on the way. So they landed this 747 in front of us, turned it away from us, and they said, just taxi up close to it, and the exhaust will melt all of the ice off of your airplane, and then you're cleared to take off.
Wow. Okay.
Brilliant.
That's a really good view of the Honeywell Primus avionics that's in the Pilatus NG, which is an incredibly capable system. That's the Honeywell Primus is also the same avionics that's in a Gulfstream 4. So kudos to Pilatus for putting such a capable avionics package inside of a single-engine turboprop, and they did eventually put this on the PC-24 also, but that's probably the hardest part of flying this airplane is the avionics.
I bet. Anyway, lovely though that is. We're in the middle of the military.
Yeah, well, and it's all related, right?
Yeah, okay.
Sure. This last story, now this is I don't know if it's really an update from last week's story. Now, we had a good conversation with Andy last week about, all of our thoughts of the 30 British pilots that are over in China right now.
Yes, yeah.
This is a bit of a development. Nav, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, when I saw it was on thedrive.com, I thought it was something to do with tarmac and things like that, but clearly not. But it does say that ex-Marine Corps Harrier pilot who worked in China has been arrested. Former US Marine Corps AV-8B Harrier 2 attack jet pilot who had been working in China has been arrested in Australia. Daniel Edmund Duggan, 54, now likely faces extradition to the United States. It was an interesting development to occur in an ongoing crackdown on ex-military pilots from Western nations working in China or on behalf of Chinese clients elsewhere. Namely, that last week's revelations that at least 30 British former military pilots had been hired by China to provide training and intelligence to the People's Liberation Army. Duggan was arrested last Friday in Orange, New South Wales by Australian Federal Police. He appeared in court there the same day, according to court records. Two police sources and his lawyer, Reuters reports. A request for bail was reportedly denied, leaving Duggan in jail in nearby Bathurst. According to one of the aforementioned police sources, the Australian Federal Police were acting on a US request that he will likely be followed by formal extradition. That will be likely followed by formal extradition proceedings. Ahead of any such move, Duggan is due to appear in court in Sydney in November again, where a further bail application will be considered. Well, he moved to China in 2014 and worked for an aviation consulting company. Prior to that, he was active in Australia, where he ran Top Gun Tasmania, based in Hobart International Airport, under the banner of Australia's premier adventure flight company. It employed former military pilots from the United States, Germany and the UK, and offered pleasure flights to paying customers. Its aircraft included the Jet Provost T5A and L-39 Albatross jet trainers and Nanchang CJ-6A prop trainers. and it also participated in Australian shows. So this is an update, isn't it? Because we didn't have this information this time last week about actual proceedings that are being levelled against people. Incredible.
Yeah, and I don't think the UK has come out yet as far as saying, are they going to prosecute? Are they going to actively look for these 30 individuals? But it looks like the US certainly is not on board with any former military member providing intelligence to the Chinese army. So at least any word of caution to any US service members or former DoD civilians that are out there, that looks like you will be arrested and you will be brought back to the US. And I can almost anticipate that the UK will probably do the same.
Yeah.
It genuinely doesn't. I mean, this story did surprise me. It was almost a shocking headline. It was quite shocking in its own right, wasn't it? I mean, it was just like, I'm literally thinking, this isn't going to end well. I don't understand why this is happening.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the military for the week.
Yeah. Phenomenal. Thank you, Armando. Brilliant stuff. Well, that's coming towards the end of the show now, isn't it? So let's just give you some ideas about how you can contact us. You are on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just search the social media platforms for Plane Talking UK. As Matt said earlier, if you want to send us pictures or anything you like, it's WhatsApp +44 757 224 9166.
You can send voice notes that way as well, by the way. Please do. We'd love to hear from you. You can send your feedback that way as well. Send us a voice note and we can play it out on air.
Good idea. That's +44 757 224 9166. Email the show, podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and the website is all the W's, planetalkinguk.com. We're also on YouTube as well. Just take a look for us there. And also, if you want to do any of your shopping via Amazon, you can use the Amazon link on our website. We get a small referral fee for you doing that, and you can also become a patron as well. Details of all that are on our website also. Now, because I didn't ask Matt what he was doing last week, I'm going to ask you now, Matt. What are you doing next week?
Not very much, really. I'm dog sitting. I'm dog sitting this week, so I will be looking after my friend's pet. That's going to be good fun. The lovely Grousey, very adorable little dog. So I will be doing I will be mostly, for the first time in a long time, working from home.
Oh, right. Nice.
Yes. Okay. See if I can remember how to do that. Yeah.
Oh, Armando, what are you up to next week? What's the plan?
Well, the joys of airplane ownership is Monday. I am already taking the Cub in for maintenance, and it's getting some brakes replaced and a couple other things. I'm not happy with the way the engine is making power. It's just feels to me like it's a little lethargic. So it's already going into maintenance, and that's part of the deal. When you buy an airplane, you got to have double the money to.
Yeah, so that's the brakes are not working properly and you're not happy with the engine performance. Those are two things, I think, on an aircraft which are quite important.
One might say fundamental, Nev.
Yes.
Yeah, and, luckily I've just been flying it around by myself, but where I first noticed it was on a 2,000-foot grass strip that I had gone into and just done some landings into. And coming out of it, it was a warm day, but I just felt like the power wasn't fully there, and then the other day, right before I came up to Colorado, I took off, and the airplane was just not accelerating. So now I had this sort of in the back of my mind engine issue, and I said, man, am I just not making power? This was a 4,000-foot grass runner, so plenty of room. And then it felt like it was just sluggish getting off the ground. And so I immediately came back around and landed. And I realized that the right brake was actually just dragging a little bit, which is not great when you're, trying to take off on short grass strips. So both of those things are getting addressed this Monday. And then other than that, I get a Hawker trip on Tuesday, and then I'll be back into Pilatus at the end of the week or something like that. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, I hope hope that all goes well for you. Next week, I'm off work. I've actually got a week off next week. So you think I wouldn't be flying anywhere, but no, not true. On Wednesday, myself and Mrs. Nev are off to Stockholm for a couple of days to see her favourite band, The Script. And I'm looking forward to that as well, actually, because I've never seen the band before, and nor has she. So that'll be really nice and something different to do as well.
Big fan personally, Nev, so I think you're going to have a great time.
They're a great band, aren't they? Yeah, she's got all their albums, but she's never seen them live. So I thought it would be nice to go and see them live. So that'll be great. Looking forward to that very much indeed. So I think that's about it, don't you, Matt? Anything else we need to cover?
No, I think all the all the formalities have been dealt with.
Well, that's fantastic stuff. Well, thanks to you, Armando, for a great contribution as ever, and to you, Matt, as well. I think Carlos is going to be back next week. Is that
that'll be
right?
nice. Yeah.
You could deign to give us his present next week.
Excellent. What a treat. Yeah.
But, in the meantime, thanks everybody for watching and listening tonight and today, and hope you have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye for now.